Oh, welcome back. You know, I was just remembering a funny story about the woman who owns this necklace. Never mind. Right, where were we? Oh yeah, so I had managed to start a bar brawl and I had met the young Arabella Smith, who was the tavern maid in The Faithful Bride. Right, so, come closer and we'll continue our tale. Right, so The Coming Storm, Chapter 2. It was raining much harder now, and the wind had picked up incredible speed. Jack and the barmaid were in an alley behind the tavern, and the slight overhang wasn't keeping them dry. He turned to thank the girl who saved him, but before he could, she threw him up against the side of the Faithful Bride. "How dare ye start a fight in my father's tavern?" Her hands were on her hips, her brown eyes flashed. "Couldn't you do your pickpocketing somewhere else tonight? Someplace nicer, whose patrons wouldn't wreck the place?" She pushed him against the wall and stepped back. Jack brushed himself off, straightening the wrinkles in his coat. "Now listen here, lassie. I am not a thief. I didn't come here by choice, and I wasn't pickpocketing." Jack waved the sack in Arabella's face. "Captain 7-foot Beastie in there stole my sack here, and I was simply reclaiming my property. So, if my gratitude is worthless to you, I'll just gather up my things, not say thank you for being so inhospitable, and be on my merry way, savvy?" Jack lifted up his head and started to walk, but Arabella grabbed his arm and threw him up against the wall again. "Do you have any idea who you've taken that sack from? Whether it's yours or not?" she asked. "No, and truth be told, I do not care," Jack said, wrestling free from Arabella's grip. "That was Captain Torrance, you idiot," Arabella said, slapping Jack around the head, uncalled for. Jack looked blank. "The infamous and dreaded," Arabella said. "Not ringing any bells," Jack answered. "The most notorious pirate this side of Hispaniola?" Arabella tried again. "Oh, wait," Jack said with a sudden look of recognition. Then his face fell again. "No, sorry." "Well, either way, you're as good as dead stealing from him." "Look, I'm not a crook," Jack said. "This crummy sack here, and what's in it is all I have. I would have brought more, but storage space for stowaways is very limited." Arabella rolled her eyes. "Then, as is typical on this bloody island, a bloody pirate stole it from me. I don't even bloody remember it happening. The bloke, he got me from behind, and what I can tell you is that here is my sack." Jack leapt up to an old barrel and opened the sack. "For instance," he said, digging around in the sack, then pulling out what looked like a stick of wax. "This candle here is not mine." Jack looked at the candle confused, then threw it down. "Surprise," Arabella said sarcastically. No, Jack said, frustrated. Digging deeper, he pulled out what might have been an old pair of underpants. He shivered and tossed them away. After that came what looked like a dried-up old rat. "Arabella, by the way," the girl said. Jack did not look up. "The lassie has a name," she continued, "and it's Arabella." Jack grunted, not really paying attention. There was no end to the horrible things in the sack. He threw out something that looked very much like petrified dung. "Look, sorry I went wild on ye," Arabella said sincerely. "It's just my father's temper is bad enough as it is. He's going to be in a frightful state now, spending the next week fixing up the place, repairing the chairs and tables that ye helped destroy." There was a small thump, as something tossed by Jack hit Arabella square in the forehead. She caught it as it fell. It was a heavy coin. Thank you," she muttered sarcastically. "This makes up for everything?" "Well, it's the only thing in here worth anything," Jack said glumly. "My knife, my box, my stash of coins." He looked up a bit bewildered. "It's all gone." Frustrated and angry, he turned the sack upside down and shook out several apple seeds. Then something big and heavy fell out of the bottom, hitting the ground with thunk. Jack leapt down to look at it. His eyes lit up as his finger closed around smooth leather. A scabbard. A long scabbard. A sword. Any sword would fetch some nice cash on the black market. And this one looked like it had some history to it. He would be rich. Well, if not rich, at least he could start to buy back the things he had lost. Then again, perhaps he would keep it for himself. He didn't have a sword. And anyone who was anyone in the Caribbean had a sword. But as he picked up the scabbard, Jack realized the weight was all wrong. Much too light to have a sword in it. Jack groaned and threw the empty scabbard to the ground. Blasted pirates. He rubbed his eyes with his fingers and sank against the tavern wall, contemplating a bleak, not so well-fed future. But Arabella's eyes widened as the scabbard tumbled to the ground. Was that a flash of gold? She picked it up, ignoring Jack's grumbles, and turned it over in her hands. Although it was scratched and covered with dirt, glints of gold and silver still remained worked into the leather, which was sparkling with rain, and she could feel a design embossed on it. No, it couldn't be, she breathed. Get me some light, she ordered. Normally, he took orders from no one, least of all an angry tavern owner's daughter, but Jack heard something in Arabella's voice that caught his attention. Without protest, he took out a little flint and tinder kit from his coat pocket and lit the candle stub from the sack. Arabella took the candle and cast its weak light over the leather. Look there, she said, pointing at the scabbard. There were some words in a language neither of them recognized, abbreviations of some sort, and then some more inscriptions in Spanish. Below that was a strange image of a serpent with feathers, worked in reddish gold, angular and foreign. Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec god. Arabella whistled. Do you know what this is? She asked. Her voice quivered with excitement. Worth lots of gold? Jack asked. It's the scabbard to the Sword of Cortés, she whispered. Jack's eyes widened. This says, belonging to Hernando. This is the cursed sword that gave Cortés the power to conquer the Aztec Empire. Arabella's eyes shone with excitement. Legend has it that the sword made him unstoppable in battle, and it gave him strange powers, like convincing the Aztecs that he was a god. The Aztecs believed the god Quetzalcoatl would come back to them someday, and with this sword, Cortés convinced them that's who he was. Legend says the sword holds limited power if the one who possesses it also doesn't have its sheath. It also played a part in Cortés's downfall. The loss of the scabbard will cause kingdoms to scab over, or as the saying goes. She turned the scabbard over in her hands, looking at the worn leather and shining jewels, and shuddered. It's supposed to be made from the innards of Aztec sacrifices? Delightful, Jack said, taking the scabbard from her with his thumb and forefinger. But how did it get here? Stone-Eyed Sam had it last, she said, remembering the conversation she overheard earlier in the tavern. What? The pirate captain? The Scourge of Panama? Jack asked. Arabella nodded. Years ago, he took the sword and sheath and used them to make himself king of an isolated island. No one knows what happened to him or to his loyal subject. Maybe the fact that the sheath has turned up without the sword has something to do with his downfall. Jack turned the sheath over in his hands, running his fingers up and down the seams. Fine craftsmanship, he thought. The sword was one of the greatest treasures in all of the Caribbean, which meant losing half of what made it so powerful would rile up any notorious and fearsome pirate to the point of, well, Jack didn't really want to think of that there. So then, Jack said, why don't I just go back into the tavern, carefully slip the sack back under what's left of Captain Turnip's chair, apologise and just be done with it. Sorry to have taken your magic scabbard. Didn't know you were planning to start your own pirate kingdom with it. Good luck with all that. Ta-ta now. Arabella shook her head. You're in big trouble, she said quietly. Stealing something like this from a pirate like Torrance? You'd better leave Tortuga immediately, or you're a dead man. She turned to go back inside. Wait! Jack grabbed her arm. Come with me. She blinked at him. Droplets of rain hanging from her eyelashes. You obviously know far more about this sort of legendary stuff than I do. And about all the local inhabitants of these waters. And if anyone saw you help me back there, you're a dead man too. Well, woman. Well, girl. He stuttered. Arabella ignored him, thinking about it. And, Jack continued, think about the freedom that would be ours if we had that sword. Freedom and power. Though Arabella tried to mask it, Jack could tell from her expression that she was in love with the idea. Well, I don't really have any other plans, besides working at the Bride for the rest of my life or until I'm married, she said sadly. Or until Dad dies from the drink, she added, a little angrier. I've had very little, really nothing here since a nasty pirate sacked the Bride last year, taking my mum with him. A big, fierce, ugly one he was too. I do miss her, my mum. Dad and I are sure she's... Arabella trailed off. Jack noticed the look on her face and felt a surge of sympathy. Arabella looked Jack dead in the eyes. All right, I'll come with ye. But we play by my rules here, which means no stealing from pirates, or anyone else for that matter, along the way. How many times do I have to tell you? I am not a thief, Jack protested. Arabella scowled, then continued. I know the perfect boat to use. An old abandoned one in Salty Cove? Jack shrugged. Sorry, lass. New here, remember? I have no idea where that is. And I don't think it would be very wise of me to ask one of those gents inside for directions. Arabella thought about it for a moment. Then she pulled a wooden hairpin out of her locks and held it to the tip of Jack's candle point. When it began to burn, she blew it out, leaving a nice charcoal tip. Then she tore a square piece of cloth from her apron, set it against the tavern wall, and proceeded to draw a map for him on it. Jack watched all of this with wide eyes. I think I should be very lucky to have such a resourceful mate on board with me, he said, leaning forward and grinning. Call me resourceful, but I'm not your mate. We're business partners, and that's all, Arabella said, putting a little X on the spot before handing the crude map to Jack. Here, ye lay low for 3 days. I'll gather supplies, drinking water and food. Meet me at the boat at dusk in 3 nights' time. Excellently done, my laddie, he said, giving her a quick bow. We have our boat, but... She looked lost for a moment. Her bout of energy over. The faithful bride had been her only home. Where will we go? Jack rolled his eyes. To get the blasted cursed sword, of course. You've already said we're as good as dead. How much deader would we be if Cortés's missing blade and the powers of a god king fell into the hands of Captain Torrance? Torrance? Arabella corrected. Whatever. I'm afraid that's all we have time for again. So tune in again tomorrow and we'll pick up from where we left off in the coming storm. So, may your sailing be smooth, the wind always be at your back, and your compass always point true. Good night.